Welcome everyone to our first event, actually, in a series of events under the framework of Sonic Crossings. Maybe a few words about the project in general before we go into your individual presentation. So Sonic Crossings is a joint project by the music department of the Goethe-Institut, the Goethe-Institut in Exile, of which I'm the head of the Goethe-Institut in Exile. My name is Carmen, and together with the Pop-Kultur Festival, we set out to invite a number of artists from a specific region. And for this edition, we have focused on artists from the South Caucasus region, namely from Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. And despite the artists that we have here tonight, we have also invited other artists that you will see in other formats that I'm happy to present later after our conversation. I'm very glad that tonight I'll have actually three individuals, but two artists with me on stage. I would like to welcome Sona, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name right now, but it's Chatrian, right? And Amasya Niziblian, which together form the experimental electronic duo Symptom era and are based in Yerevan in Armenia. The other artist I would like to welcome tonight is a visual artist, a sound artist. Many categories do her justice. Nazrin Mammadova, aka Inherroom, who's based in Baku, Azerbaijan. And also part of this program is the idea of exchange and dialogue with the local scene here. So therefore, I'm also happy to welcome Giorgi Rodionov, who originates from Georgia and is based in Berlin, where he, amongst many other projects, co-runs In the Mountains, the collective In the Mountains, which is a platform and festival uniting queer and feminist positions from the South Caucasus region. Welcome. So one of the key ideas to bring these artists together was also to shed a light on not only a region, but also shed a light on the artistic practice from this region. So before maybe we go into certain specific aesthetics, musical aesthetics from the region, I would like to start with maybe you two. So Symptom Era was founded many years ago already, actually. It's a high school project. And I guess you've been going through a lot of different genre bandings. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit in how you started and what your praxis is about.
Thank you very much, Carmen. And yes, it started in high school. And it has been a consistent project that we had. We, of course, developed our separate practices as artists, but Symptom has been growing with us. And, initially it was supposed to be a punk band, more like Riot Girl, like teenage angst. But then we explored we discovered electronic tools, which gave us the opportunity to express more and to also experiment with different sounds. Symptom has been like our shared diary. So we document our realities using audio and also sometimes collaborating with visual and performance artists.
So one of you is the producer and one of you is the singer, if I remember correctly. Who of you has which role?
I mean, basically we do everything together, but mostly I create the music, the sounds, and Amasya is working with vocals and lyrics. But sometimes we change.
I think what's very distinct about your sound is that you, of course, venture into contemporary soundings, but at the same time, you also borrow from traditional chanting, singing, folk music, folk traditions. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on this? I'm specifically thinking about this one song, a cover of Komitas, which is a very renowned folk artist from Armenia. And the song is called Tsiranica. I hope I said this correctly, but I feel like you are blending a lot of these different genres. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that and also elaborate on how, folk tradition is an important enabler for the music that you're working on.
as I said, like Symptom's format is like a diary, so we document ourselves, but we also use it to do observational work. Tziranitar specifically was this blend of and this kind of reimagination of folk music in Armenia, and also the incorporation of traditional sounds and soundscapes into contemporary spaces. And for us as artists personally, it has become an important element to use these kinds of memories, the sounds that have been repetitively used and of course grown and changed, sometimes deformed, because it helps us to navigate and explore more, and also to express our narratives. So I think it's this kind of repetitive sounds that help us express ourselves.
And I think it's also a way to kind of get back to your roots, because in countries like Armenia, the influence from the West is really strong. So it's also a way to more go inside and explore inside than just to get influence and take it.
It's actually a very good point of departure for a question that may be important to all of you. So maybe you all want to answer to this. In one of our conversations before this conversation, we were talking about, influences, because like the history of the South Caucasus region is very myriad. So you not only have, like a very ethnically rich region, but you also went through, the Soviet era, the post-Soviet era. You've also experienced a lot of influence from Western musical traditions. Now you were mentioning that you were trying also maybe to go back to some sort of rootedness. So like, in what way do you feel maybe also pressured through these influences? And what are maybe also ways to overcome this external pressure?
Well, for me, I was one of those kids who actually got under influence of Western culture as it comes to music. And for a long time, I was actually the one that's been pushing herself away for something, traditional in terms of what I saw the traditions were when I was growing up. Only later in life, I realized that there's lots of nice in there. So I started digging up. So as for me, the ultimate way to connect to roots, and I'm talking the roots of like Azerbaijani people, not necessarily the contemporary Azerbaijan. It's mugham. So it's I don't know if I could call it folk music, but its roots like even I don't know, but I guess it is folk music. But it's very like meditative place for me. So I do attend a lot of mugham concerts, and that's the way I connect. As of for I'm quite aware of, music that happened during Soviet Union and then later. But as of right now, we have a lot of Turkish influence. So that's coming from TV shows, soap opera, and obviously music. So let me put it this way: if you go into the cap, you'd rather hear more Turkish music rather than Azerbaijani. So that's how I see it. For me, it's mugham.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for your introduction, and thank you for inviting. Maybe I would just like say one sentence before answering your question. I just want to start a conversation here for giving the solidarity to all the artists that are either already arrested in Tbilisi because of their expressions against the current illegitimate government of Georgia, or are going through a lot of struggles on a daily basis, and these struggles are really huge and suppressive. And this is not happening out of blue. We see how much art was influencing the human rights, how much art was leading the demonstrations supporting human rights. But going back to your question about including a little bit of folk in the practices of not only musicians but general artists. For me, it's very interesting because you mentioned collapse of Soviet Union. there was a time when yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a time when I think Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan restarted thinking about what is the country for them, restarting the identity of the region itself, but individually the country, where it was very harsh times as well, with like economical collapse, political collapse, all the wars, everything together, and there was basically no time to rethink or like bring back our culture that was also pretty much suppressed in Soviet times. Um, so I see that like now there are more and more reclaiming coming into arts in the region rather than it was in the beginning of um, the reestablishing the states in South Caucasus. So I think now is a time where like finally all of us from the region are kind of having a moment to really think. And having the moment not to reflect or not to just copy something or like do it for survival, etc., but to really sit down and think. And I really love what's happening now in the region. That's a lot of artists are bringing their cultural backgrounds, like from the country, in their own practice, and it's very interesting, basically. And it's not only like bringing the um, history, basically, but it's reshaping the history. So, like for example, if you're including something from folk, it doesn't mean that we are singing folk. We are using the elements, and I think this is very important to do so. Also to deliver the messages through art correctly and without making it very foreign, because what I saw in like again like 30 years ago or 20 years ago, it was still like very foreign. Like if you sing something, I don't know, American or Western, from Western pop culture or anything like this, it is fun, it is great, but there's not so much like attachment. And I love seeing what's happening now, that it's basically coming back.
Could you maybe give one specific example of a genre or something that is crossing this border? Because like I mean, in your project, of course, you are a diasporic project, so you're not contextualized in the region. However, you are working with a number of people from the region. So I'm always kind of wondering, it's always sort of good to have one example of like one genre or something that you would consider that is, crossing this sonic border.
For example, I would take Murmantuladze, which is a new in Georgian stage, but he is taking this like I also feel you, like growing up I was also like very much against of everything related to like folk or like old culture, etc., because I don't know why, but it was just like a trend, you know. And what he does, he really takes this like really back then, like there were musicians doing it, but it was more like very low quality, like almost zero budget musicians that were producing it only for like dinner parties, etc. So it was not like high production. And what Murmansk Uladze, for example, is doing is like taking this genre, which is again, it's not folk, or it's also like very hard to define right now what is folk and what is not, especially in these times when we know nothing at all about anything. So he takes this like very specific genre of Georgian pop, punk, whatever is there, everything together, and translates it into the modern language and modern challenges, basically.
Your collective or your platform festival is called In the Mountains, which I think is quite interesting because, like, I imagine it speaks also to the geography, right? Because like it is known for its mountains, and the mountain has a very distinguished symbolic place in your cultural context. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how this name came to be, and is that am I assuming correctly that it has to do with the idea of creating a collective that is not necessarily building on the word South Caucasus?
We are not monopolizing mountains, obviously, but other countries also have it. But I think in the case of South Caucasus, it's very present. Like not only for like outsiders, like imagining the geography, but inside these countries in the region, these mountains has different soul. Basically, it's not geography anymore, but this is something else. I would say individual, like for each of us, it might mean something different. For me, it is the way of expressing freedom, left and alone in a good sense. How we started was also supported by Goethe in Georgia with Philomena. Here, we had this like small residence program between Azerbaijani, Armenian, and Georgian artists. And so we were discussing what we could do to create some kind of collective events that celebrates togetherness outside of these political troubles, outside of the economical challenges, etc., etc. And so, like we started, and we found nothing stronger than the concept of mountains. And first event we made in the queer club in Tbilisi, when we made this huge table, like a dinner party. We called it wedding. Nobody got married there, unfortunately, or fortunately. But yeah, this was the beginning of like just like the willingness of being together without any specific message, and that's why we chose this fake wedding. We adopted all the traditionals, not all, because there are zillion traditions, but main like fun traditions from the wedding, and we made it in the club, and I think it was brilliant. And that's what we were always saying, that like we sometimes don't need to even speak about certain topics. We just need the possibility to be in the same room and just enjoy being together. So I think like this is the main leading points of In the Mountains, where like we can just be first of all, and then open the stage for any other development.
I feel like that's a very good bridge to all of you others here on the stage, because in each of your work and all of the events that you're hosting, because like you're artists yourselves, but you're also providing spaces for audiences, for alternative audiences mostly. Nazrin, you were one of the first female DJs in Azerbaijan, and you started off with an event series that was only focused on female DJs. Could you maybe talk a little bit about, your concept of creating the safer space at the time, and how has it evolved in the scene in Baku ever since?
It's also because I realized there is dynamics of the male groups of DJs not really willing to be a support of some sort of girls DJs. I personally had went through like a not very nice bumpy road on that route, of becoming one, but because I have a lot of resistance inside of me. By the way, I think that's because I started listening to a lot of Western music, because I wanted to be everything different but locals, back in the day. So yeah, it was just I was just playing at was this little bar. I played there for free because I wanted to share my music. As of in my taste, because I was already, clubbing a lot by that time, but seeing all the venues and hearing what they play, it was either, and back in the then techno scene was developing too, so it was either techno or like electronic commercial music, and nothing in between. So there was a space I was playing there for free, just for people who visited the bar, and because I was there playing for free, I was like, I'll just whatever, I just make a lineup of few girls, and I taught them how to play basic stuff. We had like just like everything was done very quickly, just the idea itself. And so yeah, we had a party, and that was the first time I even got paid, because the owner of the place came and she gave me a little envelope. She's like, I know that's not a lot, but like, thank you so much, because the whole town was there, and there was no like it was free for all the genres that you want to play. So it was kind of like a very 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 cozy atmosphere, as if for today we even have queer spaces right now for music, and this is where you can play anything you like. Obviously they're trying to make a lineup according to one another, but still it's and this is where we hang out a lot with my friends recently, because it's just so free of a lot of things that you wouldn't think could happen to a club. But clubs are generally very kind of judgmental of a lot of things. How you dressed, where you sit, who you with, do you have a table or not, this kind of stuff. So yeah. So this queer space, it's called Labyrinth. It's been running for I think 6 months now, and they're developing. Soon we're gonna have like better sound system there, which is also nice, because places like that, they start with nothing. So that's very good. So everything else is like brought by people, and they're launching another room. So it's ongoing, and it's very I would say the situation has been changing, but it's like DIY projects run by artists themselves. So
Because I think oftentimes in Berlin, a lot of people are very knowledgeable of the scene in Georgia. It's gained a lot of currency in the last year, the techno scene, through certain clubs. If it's Mutaba Radio or Bastiani, so like people know these brands. Is there some sort of exchange through your scene in Baku with the scene in Georgia also?
there is an exchange, but mainly for techno music. And so we have this. It's a club. It's a movement. It's been running on, like, this year we celebrated 10 years together. Doesn't have its own permanent space because usually gets shut down, so it's all the time guys are looking for opportunities and for spaces. Plus you got to understand that it has to be like a kind of big space, tall ceilings, kind of basement type of, or like old factory type of buildings. So yeah, it's called In Club, and they've been collaborating a lot with clubs like Bassiani and Khidi. And there's a lot of like, so for visual arts, there are communities that's have exchange with Georgian scene. I also was participating in exhibitions and like festivals and stuff like that. But as of music, I would just say it's mainly just the techno scene.
Symptom era have also, you were just mentioning it, like officials, authorities can be really harsh on some of the events that you're hosting. In one of the interviews I read with you, you were also calling out, the disruption or discrimination of your events through police or through authorities. So what does the idea of safe space mean to you in Armenia? Like how can you ensure that spaces that you want to play at can consist in the next years?
So we had an incident where, as a project, we were trying to also reimagine the safe space, because for us, the events that we organized, because most of the events we played in the very beginning, like the first few years especially, were organized by us. And it was a bit, challenging to be like very young girls talking to these men who own these clubs and convincing them that we will bring people will have fun. Eventually, we were able to make these connections, but as Nazrin was saying, a lot of clubs, I think, in our region are not as stable physical places. So we decided to do an experiment, and we decided to bring electronic music out of clubs. And we had an opportunity to play under the basement of the music conservatory in Yerevan, which was dedicated to Komitas, and that's why we also covered Tirani Tsar. we again, we organized everything and the community supported us a lot. But halfway we were interrupted because it was not only officials, but it was the student union who was really angry and who did not understand what performance is. So we were targeted for a while, and this also kind of gave us this opportunity to rethink this idea of safe space. And now, currently in Armenia, there are these safe spaces that communities built, but again, the physicality is not consistent, and what is practiced is mostly the togetherness and this kind of support. So that's what, as artists as well, we invest in, and we also support a lot of new initiatives that are happening. Because this gives flexibility also.
Now you're here, you're performing in Germany, and there's probably also this expectation created through announcing you as artists from the South Caucasus region, which of course is also a pitfall. So I was wondering, how do you because we were also talking about the different influences that your musical legacy was going through over the political upheaval, etc., etc. And now coming to Berlin and performing here, do you feel some sort of pressure that audiences might other you in ways, maybe to both of you?
I feel pressured on with my music for as long as I remember myself, because I can imagine. So that's not something that scares me about Berlin. Actually, I think audience here is very welcoming because of so many, musical things happening in Berlin. So for me, it's actually, I'd rather, I have less, let's say, fear or anxiety playing here, because in my head that the audience is very open, rather than doing the same thing with my music in Baku, because that's actually with my music taste. This is how inherroom appeared. It's something coming out of my room. So, or you coming into my room. So it's very private kind of things. And I was actually very angry about people not dividing into certain genres, and then those people stick with those people, and then that's that. So back to the question. I don't feel intimidated at all. On the contrary, I'm very happy to play here, because I actually I think it gives me, all the knowledge just gives me very positive expectations as for an artist playing the stuff that I do, with my own music, which is experimental and ambient, which is, we don't have those kind of parties at all. So probably, I don't know, 10-20 people listen to my stuff in Baku,
I think there is not it's not the thing with having this feeling of being pressured or this expectation, but sometimes we, when we're creating, of course there are all these influences that are present in our process, especially because we use words to tell the story. And of course we use Armenian a lot, but also we want to share our stories with a lot of people. And unfortunately, we have several dominant languages, and we choose to use those tools, and also the Western influence. We choose to use them in a way to become more accessible, to be to be more inviting, to be much more safer for people who are coming from different realities. But there is no pressure that we feel. We just are very mindful of this process because, as I said, it's really important to share narratives and also to get the feedbacks, whether it's an emotional feedback, it's I don't know, it's like a conversation after the show, or it's just like an expression. So yeah, I don't think we have any pressure, yeah?
Yeah, I also think we don't have any pressure, and I think it's also out of our control how people will perceive us. And in my opinion, there's just this kind of, I don't want to say void, but like a broken bridge that I can never understand people from here, and they can never fully understand me. So it's just about connecting, connection, and feelings, because I think the feelings and experiences are what we all share together. So yeah, I think we're mostly looking to feel together and to connect together, and not thinking about how we will be perceived.
There's conversations we had before, not only because of the music that you produce, but also because of what you represent with the various events and platforms that you're creating, that there is always this element of hybridization, there is always this element of opening up, of already crossing borders, not only sonic, but also community borders, which I really appreciate. And maybe that then goes back to what In the Mountains is also doing, because you are a project other than the artists here on stage that is, based in the diaspora, based in exile. Um, do you think that with your role that you have here, there is maybe also a different potential of sonic crossing or like crossing certain community boundaries?
Yeah, totally. I will also comment about expectations because like it's very interesting topic for me. First of all, I don't think a lot of people in Berlin scene know much about the region, so I don't think they have any expectation. And also like when I mean about like using our own cultural backgrounds, I also mentioned that it's not only representing what was in the old times, but translating it into the modern language. And yeah, I think it's totally great that we can have possibility to share it here. And yeah, like in our experience, there is a lot of sonic crossings, not only in Berlin, but once upon a time in Tbilisi, it was also a safe space for that. But now more and more artists are coming from the region to Berlin or different cities of Europe, again for the sense of safe space. And yeah, like I don't know, like our we are trying to create this space where nothing is really expected from them, but the only thing that we can expect is the self-loving of what you create. And yeah.
Maybe there is a continuous conversation between what you're doing here and back into the region. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that also, because I think this is also a lot of the times, and that's just a thesis, but maybe, I mean, you know this much better, but like often I think there is an accelerator through the diaspora in terms of cultural translation and hybridization. Would you say that is the case with your project? Because you're also, talking back to the region.
This is very hard question, Carmen. Really hard. Because yeah, it depends how like us as a collective, we might have like very close ties to the region, but we cannot expect everybody to do so due to different circumstances, different life stories, etc., etc. So it really depends on case by case. But I'm afraid that like in times there might be even larger gaps between communities in the region who prefer to stay and outside of the region. I would say like in the case of Georgia, it was much easier like past I don't know 10 years. When was it? 7 years where when Georgia was having this visa-free travel and stuff. So it was like a lot of exchange, not only German artists going to Tbilisi and Tbilisian artists or Georgian artists coming to Germany, but also like Georgian community would also travel in and out. Um, and now, like for example, Georgia is like facing this huge trouble. That's this opportunity might be lost, and therefore the gaps might be larger and larger. And this is the constant fear of diaspora, people who are totally in love with our with their own countries or backgrounds or communities back then, but with different circumstances they cannot go back. um and I would say like this is the largest fear, that's there might be not more crossing but rather than parallel realities. um and sometimes I see that's like things are getting like bigger and bigger and bigger. So I would say like I don't have any clear answer to that, but just a worry and just the thoughts or wishful thinking that we still stay connected. And this is what we are aiming to do here, not to concentrate only the with the artists that are in exile, but also have the close ties to those who stayed there, not for the sake of just to know what's happening back in our countries, but also like to support them and them to support us. I think this is important.
There's not so much knowledge about the region, you said. So what do you think would have to change, or what would you wish people knew better about the region?
Also, very large topic. So what I wish to happen is to I'm not talking about certain institutions now or certain groups, but there is a lot of situations sometimes when people from Western world are coming to the region and they think they know better about the topics inside the region or about the genres inside the region. You mentioned about like make it more exotic, etc., etc. I would say it doesn't matter what kind of intention there is still it still exists. This attitude that's uh, Europe or general Western worlds, whatever it is, in our imagination, thinks that they know much better. And I don't think this is the fault of only Western world, but it's the I cannot give it a percentage which fault. Like I'm not blaming anything or anyone here, but this is just a relationship situation basically. So I would really wish to have more sense of equality, but in a good terms, because equality also became a problematic word lately. But to really be based on understanding that like we are so, like human beings in general, yes, but also like whatever happens in the region of South Caucasus, there's a high chance that will affect a lot what's happening in the rest of Europe, or in Europe, because we still have the struggle of understanding if we are part of Europe or just a crossroads between Asia and Europe. I would really wish not to learn about us as something, again, very exotic, but to learn about each other.
So the original question was like, what would you hope that, like especially, exterior contexts knew about you better? But it can also be a genre, or it can also be whatever you like to answer to that question.
If what you do as an artist catches somebody's attention and then you create a dialogue, sooner or later they're gonna know you're from, in my case, Azerbaijan, right? So, because for some time I was like, because I was always struggling with deciding where I want to stay in Baku, or should I make a move? And I traveled quite to a few countries, to realize there's a huge difference between Western world and where I come from. So I was thinking, in order for me to develop my like artistic career, that includes sound practice as well. There are obviously better chances to develop that abroad. But then I was always kind of thinking that's a bit cowardish of me. I'd rather, then I figured out I'd rather stay and somehow influence that situation. And that is happening through time. It just takes time, you know. And so there are a few people, you know, I always bump across people who said that, oh, you know, listening to your stuff kind of, you know, made me realize I want to do that too, or, you know, there's different conversations about it. So, and then I realized that no matter where I'll end up, I'm always going to be that artist from Azerbaijan. And so every time I exhibit somewhere, and then there's like some sort of like friendly encounters appear, and then they're very surprised to hear that there are people from Azerbaijan like that. So they have their image of the country somehow based on, I don't know, their memories, which can be very different, or maybe they knew people from Azerbaijan, because you know, usually Azerbaijan is famous with merchants, you know, merchants, and what do merchants do? They just, you know, sell stuff. They're trying to sell you stuff. And so, yeah, I heard that quite a lot. That so basically, representing your culture abroad is a good thing. So you don't only, you know, but when I say culture, that means even though you like very much Western influence, or maybe you're not producing music that is, yeah, you're a hybrid form, then still, when you already caught the interest of the person, simultaneously, I think the country you're coming from, because it's also part of who you are, also gets represented automatically.
I think which is relevant to our region, and maybe it can be sometimes not understandable for whoever is outside, is that our region is just unstable, and it has been like that for a long time. And we, of course, found ways to live, and we got used to it. But it does affect our approach to life and our approach to our projects, because our mindsets are a bit different. And sometimes, you know, I think it's important to take this in account, that there's a lot of instability in every aspect, in every layer of this region, because as it was mentioned before, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was no time to find the identities. So just everything was like stuck together really fast. And now, of course, we are having some space to contemplate on that, but still that instability is there, and it really does affect the way we represent ourselves, the way we live, and the way we exist. So I think that's what I can add to this question.
Do you want to add something, or? I think you also asked something that I would change about the perception. I think the only thing I would change is like people around my age to not romanticize Soviet Union or like post-Soviet countries with like the buildings and stuff. So yeah, that's it.
That's a very good point. Actually, and I think this is also important to mention, South Caucasus as a category itself is, of course, also a Soviet categorization. So in itself, it can also already feel like an external categorization. So a lot of open questions, a lot to seek. Thank you so much.